Thank you for joining us for our Engaging Students in Distance Learning webinar. My name is Carla Jimenez, and I'm the coordinator of Family and Community Engagement, and also a parent of a high school student and a kindergartner here in the district. So I know firsthand how challenging distance learning can be for our students and our families. Trust me, it is no easy task working full-time and helping students learn remotely. And so this is why I'm eager to see what we have to share in today's webinar. So if you can, bring along your computer or your mobile device just so you can follow along some of the links that we'll be sharing, or just listen in and try it out later. We'll be providing those links in the chat box, so make sure that you have that open during the presentation. Also know that the webinar is being recorded, and we will be posting that on our website at u-46.org/webinars, and it will also be sent to you via email. Any questions that you may have during this webinar, please include them in that Q&A box that is located at the bottom of your screen. We will have some time towards the end of the presentation to answer the question, but please do not include any identifying information, as this is a public forum and it is being recorded. So now what I'll do is introduce our presenter for tonight. It's Lori Lopez, and she's our coordinator of distance learning. She also did our presentation last week. So now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Lori. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Carla, and welcome everyone. Like Carla said, thank you for, you don't have to brave the nasty weather, but you're in the comfort of your own homes, but probably still a little bit sleepy and ready to call it a day. But we are going to go ahead and get started right away. And I'll start by reviewing our topics for tonight. And we're going to talk just a bit about some of those routines and schedules that are so important. Supporting student engagement, some of those look-fors, participation and learning, and what you can do as a parent to help support your student during distance learning. While it may seem like everything about school as we once knew it has changed this year, it really is important to remember some of the basics. And in order to be ready to go each morning, it's important for students to still get to bed early enough each night for a good 8 to 10, even 12 hours of sleep, so that they're ready to go for distance learning in the morning. And in addition to getting enough sleep, starting the day with a good breakfast provides students the fuel they need to really actively engage and focus in learning activities. We'd also like to encourage your student to eat some healthy snacks throughout the day and drink plenty of water as they're learning. Now that students are really, they're seated more than ever, we all are, and planning for deliberate exercise during the day really does help students focus. This could include taking a walk, dancing up and down, jumping up and down, whatever the case may be. And finally, the last one listed here, fun, that may seem obvious, but we would like to encourage you to perhaps make a list of some fun activities and use those as as a source of motivating your students throughout the day. And as I said, a part of routines is this daily schedule you are all now living. What you see here is a screen that reflects an early elementary student's day. And as you can see, as mandated, there are 5 hours of instruction. And as you can see also, the morning portion of the day in primarily that yellow is that synchronous or face-to-face live community building instruction with the entire class. And the later afternoon is reserved for that asynchronous, or that learning that takes place in small groups or more independent learning activities. In the middle school, which you are already living, just like elementary and high school, the schedule you see here indicates that A-B schedule that you're following with your student. At the top, it's that A-B schedule that is very important to be aware of. The yellow indicates that synchronous face-to-face instruction that is primarily used via Zoom. And that is particularly important for students to have that link so that they can access those in-person sessions with their teacher and classmates. And just to mention just a couple things about that, the Zoom piece of this, when your student does access their classroom via Zoom, as you may or may not know, they will enter what is known as a waiting room so that their teacher is able to verify who the student is before allowing them into class. And this process can take a few minutes, so please encourage your student to be patient. And then when students do enter their class, the microphone and the video are both turned off. And then students have that option of turning on their video, and they can also be unmuted to participate in discussions or ask a question. And on the days, these asynchronous days, where it's not necessarily face-to-face, teachers will provide resources and curriculum for students to continue to work independently. There may be even videos for students to watch on their own. Students may also be meeting with their teacher in small groups. These are all indicated by the blue days, the asynchronous days. I want to point out at the bottom of here, you'll see the office hours. All teachers are expected to have office hours at the end of their day in order to meet with students. Here you see that it's 3 to 3:30. The high school schedule is actually very similar to the middle school schedule, allowing for that A-B schedule, synchronous, asynchronous every other day. The same expectations apply to those Zoom face-to-face interactions with the class itself. They're the same expectations as they are for middle school. And again, those office hours are designated by the teacher so that your student can make an appointment with a teacher if they'd like to have some one-on-one or even some small group time. This can be a little bit confusing the further into this that we get, and a detailed calendar, including this A-B schedule for the entire school year, can be downloaded from the U46 Back to School webpage, and Carla will have that link in the chat box for you. It's actually a real handy thing to download, print out, so that you don't lose sight of what an A day is and what a B day is. Just to point out some different aspects of engagement, receiving instruction digitally and through Zoom can make it extremely difficult for both students and adults alike to focus, and providing an area in the room that is as free from distractions as possible is really optimum. Turning off the TV and video games and any other distractions is really the best scenario. And it's also worth mentioning that students, particularly in the upper elementary, grades and beyond, do need to be allowed some freedom. And what I mean by that is it can be hard for parents not to hover over their student's shoulder. And it's really important to allow your student some space to participate in class discussions and speak with their teacher and their classmates. After all, we're not used to our parents walking around with their student throughout the day if we were in a building. It also might be important to not know or allow your student to doodle as they're listening. That's okay. Perhaps sit in a more comfy chair. Maybe they like to fidget. It's okay to have a little squeeze ball or something like that. That's all okay. And finally, during the season of learning that is so new and challenging, we encourage you to take advantage of every opportunity to provide positive feedback to your student. And we'd also like you to encourage you to celebrate success with that growth mindset in mind. And what I mean by that is really celebrating specific behaviors, not necessarily outcomes. And what I mean by that is really praising your student perhaps for working really hard and sticking with a difficult problem, as opposed to saying, oh, you got the answer right, or you're just so smart. That's more of a natural ability sort of thing. So really encouraging positive feedback related to those behaviors. In terms of this growth mindset, it also supports this development of what we're calling these 21st century skills that our schools and teachers are working to develop in your student. And there's this new kind of mantra that's called the 6 C's. And it really is focused on these jobs that are being created and imagined every day, ones that we don't even know will exist yet. And what you'll see on this diagram is what employers are really looking toward now and into the future in terms of those skills they really want their employees to have. They require creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, a strong ability to communicate, and certainly a strong character and citizenship and the ability to collaborate are all necessary skills. And believe it or not, the challenges your student is facing now will help them prepare for the future. And it really is no longer about just finding an answer. Anyone in this day and age can Google an answer and get to that. It's really about this process and applying all of these skills that you see on these on the 6 C's here. As you know, the district is committed to a standards-based learning and assessment, and it supports this type of learning process, and teachers continue to look at individual standards and measure your students' progress on their journey to proficiency and perhaps mastery. And one thing to keep in mind is that all students are in a different place and a different time on their journey with these various standards. And that is really a paradigm shift in terms of where I went to school. We were all on the same page at the same time, but perhaps I might have taken a little bit longer and would have benefited from a little bit more time with some of the standards. So it's not important to be at the same time, at the same place with mastery. It all takes us a little bit different amount of time. And I guess one of the things we can't forget to mention this evening is we are all doing our best, and we understand that when it comes to technology, there are certainly some aspects that are completely out of our hands. Perhaps if your internet is having a moment, or if your student is having a moment, or a link won't work and you can't get something uploaded correctly, you know, really it's okay. The important part is that when something like this happens, please make sure and communicate. Contact the teacher, explain what has happened. The same thing goes, you know, if your student is absent, please make sure to contact your school, your student's school, just as if they were walking in the door. And again, I just can't emphasize enough that we really are all doing our best. And we know that things, including internet and beyond, some things are going to happen, and it's okay. One of the things that we talked about in last week's webinar was the importance of accessing Canvas every day. And that could be done either through the Waffle, through Clever, through the U46 home site. If you are not on a U46 device, you can access Clever that way. But this is a reminder tonight that if you are already in Canvas, what you see on the screen here is access into Canvas and what the navigation bar looks like. You'll see that you can actually enter Clever. So vice versa tonight. And the reason you'd ever want to go into Clever, as you may or may not have discovered already, Clever houses a lot of student apps, the textbook, different intervention curriculums. it's just another way of going about it that you may find helpful should your teacher ever ask for you to access something via Clever. Know that it's in Canvas. And as we really emphasized last week, and we continue to emphasize, is that participation and daily attendance in your students' digital classroom is expected, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, face-to-face or working on their own. And as a reminder, you're looking at a student's dashboard in Canvas, which many of you have probably already seen. And in this particular case, it reflects all of the students' courses. And as part of your students' daily routine, they should be checking in not only to their student email, but into each one of these courses to check for announcements, review assignments, and important due dates. And remember that each individual course houses all of those resources that students need, pardon me, to complete assignments and assessments. During our last webinar together, we also talked a lot about becoming a parent observer in Canvas. I hope if you were able to join us, or even on your own, if you did become an observer, that's awesome. We encourage you to do this, particularly when you're not in Canvas every day with your student, as a primary and elementary parent might be. This is more upper elementary, middle school, and high school. This particular slide, I wanted to introduce you to the Canvas Parent app on your phone, which can also be very handy. I've outlined the instructions here just very briefly. It's a great deal the same as setting up the Observer account. And once you have that Observer account, it's very, very accessible to get to the Parent app. But this is, again, another way of looking into your students' dashboard and viewing in their courses those upcoming assignments, those past assignments, alerts, and notifications. Carla will include this link too. It will, this Canvas community outlines directions to just about everything that you could possibly imagine. So emphasize that Google is our friend. If you Google, how do I do this in Canvas? You'll most likely be entered into the Canvas community, and it will answer your question either with a video or text instructions. There's also instructions for the Parent Observer account and the app on the U46 via a video. One thing I'd like to emphasize tonight is that while accessing Canvas every day is absolutely critical, it's important to review your students' attendance and grades and perhaps any notifications via the Infinite Campus portal. And what you're seeing here is on the U46 home site, you have the link there, will lead you into Infinite Campus. If you have any trouble accessing that, again, on the U46 page, there are a couple different avenues you can go for help. But I can't emphasize enough that going in there is important. That is where your student's official grade will be housed. And again, it's if you have any difficulty accessing that, make sure and visit that U46 page. You can either call for help or email for help in terms of accessing that. And again, how can you help? It's, I think the primary way that you can help tonight that we'd like to focus on is really assisting your student with the technology, particularly in those primary grades if they're having trouble entering a Zoom or accessing a link, something like that. But that is helpful, and there are certainly all of those avenues that I've been sharing where you can get help with the technology. I can't encourage you enough to encourage your student to communicate with their teachers. That has to work both ways. And if you need to communicate too, I would encourage that. We want to hear from parents in the event that you are experiencing any struggles. And asking questions, everybody's asking now. Don't be afraid that something is not a good question. Ask your student who you're sitting next to. Again, particularly if they're in those upper grades, how they're doing, what they're doing. do they need assistance, and have them explain what they're doing with you, their assignments and assessments. So ways that you can help for sure. And I have a little story for you tonight, and it is called The Butterfly Story, and some of you might have heard it, but it really is to emphasize a point. And this story, in a very, very abbreviated version, is about a young boy who finds a butterfly making its way out of a cocoon on the ground, and he picks it up and he helps that butterfly come out of the cocoon, pulls it out, and then, the butterfly isn't moving much. So he sets it on the ground and still isn't moving, goes inside the house to get his mom and brings her out. And she sees the butterfly on the ground, and she said, you can't touch the butterfly. It won't do what it needs to do. It won't be able to fly now that you've touched it. And that really is an analogy for our work here, is that it's really hard for us to watch students struggle, but it's also a very important part of their transformation so that they too learn to fly. And again, I'd like to conclude tonight with encouraging you to ask questions. Encourage your students to ask questions. You can email the teacher via Canvas. It goes right to their Gmail. Always visit that U46 site. There are so many. It's rich in resources, and it is rich in accessing help. One of those avenues for help is the Let's Talk, which some of you may have already found. And finally, as we wrap it up, to review our evening together, make sure you designate a learning space in your house, create a schedule, know the schedule, print out the schedule, limit as many distractions as you possibly can, check in with your child, but try not to hover, communicate with their teacher when necessary, don't forget to move and exercise and have fun, try not to be a helicopter, and most important, take good care of yourself. This is a nice segue into promoting our next week's webinar, which is promoting self-care for parents and caregivers. And we do hope that you join us. With that, I'm going to turn it over back to Carla.
Thank you so much, Lori. Again, you will receive via email a copy of this recording and a copy of the presentation in PDF format. So like that, you have the links available. In the email, you will also find a link to our survey. So please take a moment to complete that. The survey also gives you an opportunity for you to provide your contact information in case we're not able to answer your question today or you need a follow-up. And as Lori mentioned, make sure you visit our U46 Engage webinars page to see our upcoming webinar and to register for these. We will be adding more as we continue to confirm our topics and our dates. Our next week, as she mentioned, it is promoting self-care. It is on Wednesday at 7 next week, and then on Thursday at 9 a.m. And then remember to bookmark the digital classroom website. Here is the link to that, where you can be updated on the distance learning tools and information. So that's where we keep the most updated information. And now what we'll do is move on to our Q&A, our questions and answers. So if you have a questions, please type it into the Q&A option, which is located at the bottom of your screen. And we have had questions come in. A few, one that I answered was, how are the kids taking attendance on asynchronous days? So that's a very good question. As a parent of a high school student, I had that question initially. And so students' attendance will be taken automatically during asynchronous periods. So attendance will be marked present for asynchronous periods as long as the student was marked present for one of the synchronous periods. Where do we obtain the student pairing code for the Parent Canvas app? So I included the link in the Q&A box. that will walk you through on how to obtain that pairing code as a tutorial video that we have. And so it's available in English and in Spanish. Another question that came
I was going to say,
in.
Carla, you have to be with your student to get that. The student goes in and then provides that pairing code.
Correct. So your student has to log into their Canvas account and then use that pairing code. This is more for that secondary level, middle and high school. For the elementary level, you most likely are logging in through their account, but you can also do it through their account to connect, to have that observer account. Question is, why the option of on or off video?
That is a good question. And particularly for middle and high school, all students enter with their video off, and the turning it on was really became an equity issue, certainly a comfort issue, and that was just the position our district took in terms of securing safety for one thing. And if students, you know, teachers encourage them to show their video, but it is not a requirement.
Thank you. What was the reasoning used to require young children, early elementary especially, to participate in 3-hour Zoom calls every morning? My experience with my child is that 3 hours for a 7-year-old is too long, even with movement breaks or support from a parent. I am considering advocating or petitioning to the school board to loosen this requirement for teachers of very young children.
Yeah, that's a good question, and one which the school district itself doesn't have a lot of movement with. As I said earlier, the Illinois State Board of Education mandates the 5 hours, and the challenges presented at an elementary grade, and Carla, you could probably speak more, you have an elementary student, you know, the asynchronous or more of that independent time is, I don't know, maybe I haven't experienced it in my house, it might be even more challenging. Maybe you could speak to that. Everybody's experience is a little different.
Yes, as a parent, what I can say to this is someone shared with me in a point that when, you know, you're sitting down with a 3-hour Zoom call, I mean, feel free for your child, you know, if they need a break and the teacher hasn't called for a break, feel free to do that. The child does not have to be in front of that Zoom, just strictly looking at the Zoom the whole time. I mean, they wouldn't do that in a regular classroom. They're going to have to get up. They're going to have to walk around. They may fidget, like you said, if they need to doodle or something to kind of distract them to keep from those 2.5 hours. And, you know, as a parent, that's what I can recommend. Again, what you said, Lori, you know, it's mainly you know, what we receive from the state on the guidance for the time that we have to follow this. The next question, do they post their grades on Parent Campus or only on the Canvas now? But to add to that is, do they post the assignment grades on Parent Campus or on the Canvas?
The Infinite Campus grade is the student's official grade that will lead to their final quarter and semester grade. So that is the official site of their official grade. In terms of Canvas, what you're seeing is individual feedback for assessments, but not necessarily an official grade. I hope that makes sense. They're seeing feedback for each individual assignment, but not a cumulative grade. Those official marks are in Infinite Campus. So it's important to go back there and check. That's what will be on the report card.
Thank you, Lori. Is there any other forum other than Facebook that has space for U46 parents to share tips and ideas on helping to keep their kids engaged in distance learning? Great question.
That is a great question. We one of the things that avenues I mentioned via the Let's Talk, we are always interested in feedback in terms of what we can do better. I just can't encourage you enough to let us know what you're thinking. We've taken a lot of the feedback and, you know, certainly tried to implement what we can. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, and I also would like to remind everyone that we do have various advisory councils. Some will be starting soon, and you can connect with those via virtually via Zoom. Tomorrow, specifically, we will have our first Citizens Advisory Council meeting. Tomorrow, Thursday, the 10th at 7 p.m. Visit our website calendar. If you go to our main page, u-46.org, look for calendar up on the right-hand corner, and then click on tomorrow. You will see the CAC meeting, and then you will find the link. That's another great place to connect with other parents. And then also your school's PTO or PTA or parent-teacher organization, if they have started to meet. I know it's pretty early on in the school year, and some are still trying to organize. Next question. I apologize, I was late to the meeting. Did we talk about the district's plan for return to campus, especially for kids with IEPs?
We did not talk about the district's plan to return to campus. We're just following the state's advice on that, the health department. So we do not have any additional information there. We all hope to be back as soon as possible and as soon as it's safe. In terms of if you do have struggles with, if you have a student with an IEP, I can't encourage you enough to reach out to the case manager and make sure the teachers are aware of the struggles, if there are struggles, but I certainly understand, you know, that can be difficult, and we hope to get back so that there can be one-on-one support, but right now there is no in-person support.
Thank you, Lori. Can the district do something about restricting YouTube on the student systems? We know there's a lot of educational videos, but also more distractions. Is it easy for a student to start to watch a video requested by the teacher and get lost? We are finding this to be a significant distraction.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. In terms of the teacher access to YouTube and student access to YouTube, that is something that I mean, even the district has the, you know, the YouTube videos there. It's not something I foresee happening, but I certainly understand that can be a challenge, and I understand that could be a challenge.
We understand that some teachers in Canvas use assignments and some use discussions and some use a mix. It has been complicated to learn this and get used to different teacher styles. We agree that teachers should have the freedom to do what they think is best, but can the teachers be encouraged to explain this to parents so parents can help their students be on top of this?
I think I can't emphasize enough. If you have questions, make sure to reach out to teachers. There isn't a chat feature, so to speak, on Canvas. So discussions is a widely used aspect of Canvas, and in terms of assignments and versus modules, that can get a little bit muddy too, but those are all different aspects to this learning management system that we have all said is, you know, if we're all in this common spot together, it could even be wider than it is. So to answer your question, I just can't encourage you enough. If you have a question about how to participate in a discussion, if you don't know how, that's certainly something you can, you know, how do I participate in a Canvas discussion? And it'll show you exactly how to. But those are different aspects of our learning management system that are available to teachers in Canvas. So yeah, they do use different tools within Canvas.
Thank you, Lori. We greatly appreciate your time and attention. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.